Hello, everybody. My name is Brene Carrington. I am the president of KAUSE Marketing and PR. We're here for the Real Food, Real Power webinar series, and I'm here with Brandon Stark. Well, I'll let him introduce himself. He with the People's Market.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brene. My name is Brandon Starks. I'm the founder and CEO of the People's Market. We are a farm to door delivery service that services communities right here in the DMV area, as well as Baltimore City and in parts of Baltimore County.
Thank you. And I'm excited for Brandon to be here. And I'm sorry, I keep saying Stark all the time because I think of Tony Stark. Yeah, which is so funny, like superhero, which also like relates to our project.
Word.
So I'll just go ahead and ask. So one thing we have here is the Fresh Force, which is a group of superheroes that we kind of created to support this project. So if you were a superhero, what would be your name and what would be your super?
Oh, wow. My name. I feel like my name would be something around agriculture. You know what I'm saying? Like super harvester or something like that, or like super
What?
grow man or something. But yeah, I feel like my superpowers would just be like taking care of the planet, like making sure that our soil is rich and our waterways are healthy and our air is clean, like just living a Black experience in America. Like a lot of our communities, we don't necessarily have access to those things traditionally. So for me, just like folks living in a world that just had all of those resources at their fingertips would be great. So yeah, I guess you call me a super planet man. That's what I'm gonna do. Super, super planet man, and my powers are to keep the earth clean and not to do any damage to Mother Earth. And everybody can grow their own food and drink fresh water, spring water that doesn't cost you $5 a bottle. You know what I'm saying? Like,
And if you
have fresh air. Kids ain't got asthma and allergies and all that stuff, right? But yeah.
I like it. I like it. And actually, kind of, I feel like you even touched on the next question. So, this series is a real power, real food, real power. What does that mean to you?
I think the reason why I started this work is really rooted a lot in my family history and dynamic. My great grandmother, she grew up on a farm. Her parents were sharecroppers, and growing up after church, we would always go. Me and my mother would go to her apartment. She lived in like a senior living facility in Capitol Heights. We would go to her house after church, and she would make us a meal. And she would like talk about her upbringing while she was cooking this food, because she literally she explained to us how she used to wring the neck on the chickens. You know what I'm saying, to harvest them, and how she used to pick her own collards, her own kale, you know what I'm saying? Like harvest her own food, her own onions, sweet potatoes, stuff like that. So I think about the fact that, she was a woman who had an eighth grade education, who worked as a custodian in the Prince George's County public school system. And like most people would look at someone like that and just be like, oh, they don't have a formal education. You know what I'm saying? They don't really know how the world works. But I feel like I learned so much from her about the power of food. She used to tell me when we sat down and had lunch with her that, you should know what your food source is. Like you should know who your
Mm,
farmers are. Like don't just rely on the grocery store to get your food. And also food that you can trace is better for you. It's more nutritionally dense. You can just look at it. She would just say, just look at the leaves on this food. Like this food doesn't look alive. Like she would go to the grocery
mhm,
store and get food, and she was like, this food is nothing like the food that I grew up on. You got to eat two of these to get the nutritional density that I got when I was a child. So I think food is power. Food dictates whether you have energy. It
mhm,
dictates whether you have the brain capacity to do certain tasks and complete things. I mean, that's why, you go to certain neighborhoods and people, are healthier. They live longer, they have access to better access to better food resources, right? And then you go to other neighborhoods and you see fast food places, you see Chinese food restaurants, right? Or carryouts in the DMV area. And I'm sure in a lot of cities in places where there's higher density and a lot of black people. And like, I mean, eat a kale salad and eat a chicken box and tell me who's gonna make it through the day. You feel what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
who's gonna get through the day? Who's gonna have a highly functional day? Who's gonna make better decisions? All of those things. That's really at the root of what I think of when I think of food and power. Is that like our day starts with food. Our
Mhm.
day ends with food. Right? So the things that we put on our plate and the things that we ingest dictate in a lot of ways whether or not we're going to have a good day.
Mhm.
It's not the end all be all, but if you believe in control and your center of control, the food that you ingest and the things you put into your body is a big center of control for you as an individual and also as a community because we have access to things and there's patterns. There's you know certain stores and certain corporations will pop up in your neighborhood based on what they understand about the consumer in those communities, what people are willing to ingest, what
Mhm.
people are willing to deal with, who like we don't have to go organic. They don't care. They just want a good price. So let's just give them what we can. Let's cut some corners. It could
Right.
be genetically modified. They don't
Yeah.
care. They just want to eat and survive.
Right.
Right. And I think that's the reason in a lot of ways why we're in the situation we're in this country is that we as black people, as brown people, as people who are marginalized, even white folks, right? In more rural places. You go out to
Mhm.
West Virginia, you go out to, some of these states, out west and in the south, and it's very impoverished and very, very white, right? They don't have access to high quality food. It's the reason why we don't have power in a lot of ways, right? So I think it's incumbent upon us to pay more attention to the food that we eat and also the food that's in our environment and in our ecosystem.
Right. And you definitely said a lot there. I think it's a lot to unpack, just to unpack and lay on the table, no pun intended, for any viewers or listeners that for one, just you touched on the connection and the exposure that you had as a younger person, which I know even for myself, which is my mom, myself and five brothers, she used to take us to the farm. We used to pick strawberries, apples, whatever was in season
Mhm.
at that time, she took us to the farm. And just that constant exposure and appreciation. Yeah, I will say it really started with that. We didn't look at it like we were doing labor or anything. And it wasn't for that either. But even if it was, that wouldn't be a problem. But just that's again one of the misconceptions and myths or apprehension people have because they historically how they might view farming or agriculture because of this country's history, of course.
Yeah.
But it was a recreational activity for us. But she
Mhm.
used that time, technically, she used that time to educate us though. So
Yeah.
just picking up things along the way and talking to people, the farmers there, and just getting to know their family and how they operated and everything just was a game changer in our life in general, like you
Yeah.
said, and is not it wasn't it was deeper than the food.
It
It
is.
gave us a sense of autonomy, critical thinking that we like not just accept things that we ingest. And when I say ingest, I mean food, TV,
Amen. Nah, amen.
it went
Amen.
further in life.
Yes.
Um yeah, I think, like you said, we wake up and eat. That's a part of our livelihood and start. But it really, just like we wake up and eat, it is deeper than the food, and it causes us to think about other things in our diet in general and our lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. It's funny you say that because so like my great grandmother never like said to me. So she grew up on a farm and she was a sharecropper. But it's interesting because I think her parents were sharecroppers. This is what she told me. I asked her as well, and I think she was a sharecropper, but she didn't want to say it. Like she
mm,
didn't want to actually say those words.
yeah,
Because I asked her, I was talking to my uncle, one of my mother's eldest brothers, and he knows him and my grandmother were like tight when she was alive. Like he could do no wrong in her eyes. So I was like, it was like Thanksgiving. We had a couple beers. We were like sitting down talking. And I was like, yo, like, tell me more about like going to grandma's farm. And I was like, where was it? All this other stuff. He was like telling me where it was, like right off 202. right across the street from this place and that, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, oh, yeah, I know those landmarks. I know exactly where it was. And he was like, yeah, grandma was a sharecropper. And I was like, she was? He was like, yeah. He was like, it was a white man that owned the land. Her and grandpa, they farmed it and they would like, basically like sell the food and pay him through the food sales, right?
Mhm.
And like I asked her, I was like, "Were you a sharecropper, grandma?" She was like, "I wasn't no sharecropper. I ain't never sharecropped a day in my life. My parents were sharecroppers." And I think she was, but I think to your point, like there's the history, right? That
Yeah.
that the dark history, enslavement. You know what I'm saying? Like what we had to deal with, the bondage that we dealt with that also like caused us to kind of like push away from those things.
Yeah.
But also, like, to your point, those like the being on the land and like experiencing it is such a liberating experience. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's so sad that our history is what it is because it kind of robs us of even wanting to be involved with agriculture and farming and things of that nature. And it's like on my end, right? There's a whole business around it, right? That's how you make money like this, right? Like there's a whole land ownership piece to it. There's a whole
Right.
freedom
Right.
piece to owning land. I have family who on my mother's paternal side, they own acres of a lot of land. Her grandparents they just bought land whenever they got money. That was their thing. They got a little bit of money, they bought land. They kept buying land in Prince George's County and St. Mary's County, and also had some land in Florida and other places. They would just buy up pieces of land. And, I think about the power that that gives you. They built like a
Mhm.
whole family compound on land, And we know that to be like that's where the Hollies live. That's where, that's where our family lives. It's power in that.
Yeah.
You can't ever take that away from people, you
Yeah.
know? So I think thinking about our history here and the darkness of it, I think, that really has like put a stain on what our possibilities can be or could have been. I think we're getting back to it now. I think we're getting
Right.
back to a place of not being ashamed of our history. But I think it's time to reclaim it because that's our power at this point, you know?
Yeah, and I think the like which the shame and just the history and the shame that comes with it, it builds, I would say it supports such a complex system that we have here in this country and even abroad,
Yeah,
that what we can be ashamed of, that other people can claim it and make it a thing of luxury, and so to the point like, okay, if we talk about it in this space, it's shame, but if we talk about it in this space, oh, that's something luxury. That's something I can't
absolutely.
afford. That's something that's not for me. That's something. So it's so the packaging, and I guess that comes in. I mean, from my field, the packaging matters to a lot of people in the space, that it makes a difference between shame or power. I mean, I think
Right.
crossing that and bringing awareness to it is a great opportunity. Well, like we're doing here, just to dispel that and kind of let people know that there's no shame in history. Yeah, it's
No,
not. So, and even in that, just the stigmas actually in general is something that in our project we talk about just with the the fresh force. One of the villains actually is a stigma shade, just trying to shame people about being involved, even with the EBT, or even have benefits in that way, and using that
yeah,
to feed their family is like, there's no shame there.
yeah,
But we just bring up a lot of points that we hope to kind of expose, build on in that way. So I just, yeah, it's such a
no doubt, no doubt.
comp. I would say it's simple but complex at the same time.
It is. It's very complex, but I love what you said about the packaging. And I think that that is also something that I grapple with. I think anyone who takes something that people saw as shameful, right? And that other people they can just exist in that, right? Like eating watermelon. You know what I'm saying? Like black folks eating watermelon. It's just like, we'll look at each other like, you want to eat that watermelon in front of all these people? You know what I'm saying? Whereas after slavery, that was a cash crop for Black folks. We made a
Right.
lot of money selling watermelon. We were building businesses, financing a church fund, financing whatever, selling watermelons off the back of a truck, selling watermelons out the back of whatever, you know what I'm saying, at your farm. And I go to Whole Foods and they got watermelons everywhere.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? They making money. They getting paid.
And
No
it's real
shame.
power.
Power, right? Real power. And I think the work that you all are doing is about reclaiming. You know what I'm saying? It's time for us to reclaim the things that are due to us and not to be ashamed of anything, honestly. As long as we're not hurting nobody and we're building and
Yeah.
supporting humans, there's no shame in it. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a great point. I agree 1,000%.
What are some changes that you would make to our food system?
Yeah, I think one of the things is promoting local farmers more. I obviously selfishly I'm saying this because I chose to build a business and a marketplace around this. I believe that we should eat food the way that it was intended to be eaten, not traveling, not, using to preserve food. Food should be preserved naturally, and if it can't be preserved, it should be eaten. So like making sure that your food source is close to you, as close as possible. One, because it's more nutritionally dense. And then two, because when food travels, you need tractor trailers, trucks, and vehicles to make them travel across the country. And like, right, I feel like our food system is just like this big web. It's like
Mhm.
a spider web. And it could just be like some real clean roads. You know what I'm saying? Like I think we need to work on local policy that allows for more agricultural land and preservation, to give tax cuts to farmers and
Mhm.
people who work in the agriculture space. Because I was just listening to a podcast, and the governor of New York gave a $920 million tax credit to Tesla for coming to New York to build a plant, right? What if local governments and states gave tax credits to farmers for planting food
Yeah.
to make sure that people were fed,
Yeah.
and so that we had a cleaner, stronger food supply chain? We wouldn't have to rely so much on global food. We wouldn't have to rely so much on California. There's droughts in California, right? The environment is changing. We don't have to rely so much on farms that are so far away from us and corporations that benefit, right, from
Mhm.
mass production and not paying people an honest living wage, right? Like all of these things impact us, and we're kind of doing things backwards. So we built this whole system has been built in a very forceful way, when we need to be building systems that are more natural, right? That are like, it's just a flow. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
if I have plenty of space in my county, do not build another townhouse building there, right? Like don't build more townhouses, don't build more luxury homes, build food, like build spaces for people to grow food,
Yeah.
and like spaces for people to make products that are natural. So that, and I think this is the thing that we don't think about, again, because of what the system has done to us. I can only speak from a Black experience, because that's been my experience. What this system has done to us is to make us want to mimic, right, these
Yeah.
Western ways of living.
Yeah.
And if we mimic those things, then now we are the standard. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, look, we got a brother who's doing things this way, so he must be the standard. What we really need to start to promote is people who are doing the opposite. We need systems that actually make sense for our people, not systems that meet this standard that's been set, that's unrealistic for us, right? And honestly, just unrealistic for everyone. That's the reason why we're
Yeah.
in the situation we're in, right? I just think for us, we really feel it. You know what I'm saying? Like it really hurts us, right? So I think, and that's why you said this need to be open ended, because I'm open ended. I think we really need to think about how we exist and the systems around us that support us, and honestly, not being too lazy or afraid to change things,
Yeah.
because we can change them.
Yeah.
piece by piece, little by little, right? Even generationally. Doesn't have to happen in this generation. It can
Mhm.
happen over the next 100 years, right? Because it took 100 years for us to get here, or more, right? So like I think we just need to change the way we exist so that we're more in tune with nature, more in tune with the way that things should work instead of fighting against the grain, fighting upriver. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Fighting against the current. Let's
right,
just start to flow a little more. You know what I'm saying? Let's start to go with it. Let's
right.
figure it out, right? So our food system, honestly, that's the thing I would change. I would change our food system. I
The whole thing.
don't think that we should be consuming food from across the world and across the country. It just doesn't make practical sense.
Yeah. And I think similar to what you're saying, like there's a lot of things that the food system, the traveling, the pesticides, the GMO, the laws that deter farmers in some ways. It's a whole system that's built. I will say if profit is the end goal, then our health is not.
Yeah.
So in my health, I mean all the ways that the food system affects us:
Mm.
physical health, mental health, financial, just like the price, all the ways it affects us. I like in your response, it kind of reminded me of your first answer to the superhero. You mentioned like the soil, like healthy soil, the water, the sunlight. So just I guess the last question would be in thinking about how people and communities can grow and thrive, what partnerships or factors or things of that nature would you say would be needed to create that thriving environment, like the healthy soil, the sunlight,
Yeah.
water, the
Yeah. I think so. Part of me thinks I'm gonna use like some Gen Z vernacular. Like part of me feels like this generation is cooked. Like the generation, I'm a millennial, the generation above us. This generation, I think they're what are they? Generation X or Y or something. Whatever. The generation ahead of us, the baby boomers, like I think they're cooked. I think that's done. They live in the way that they live. They don't want to see things change. I think us really starting to educate, Gen Z and the generation behind them around why this is important for them. And I think Gen Z in a lot of ways is very, very conscious of the impacts of climate change, very conscious of the impact of what happens if we don't have soil, if we don't have good water, if our air is not clean at a very practical level. They're like, how will we breathe? What will we drink? What will we eat? Right? Like, and they are smart in that way. But I think it's really going from activism to execution,
mm,
right? And I think that generation behind Gen Z and parts of Gen Z are the execution generation. And like I see myself as a part of the work. I don't know that I'm like totally like in the work. I feel like I'm like a part of it, but I'm not like all up in it, right? But just educating them about what we know and where things are going, and them actively, that generation, that next generation, coming up with real solutions, right? And studying ways that we can start to heal our earth, our planet, our communities one step at a time. You know what I'm saying? Planting more trees, having more ag space, less development, right?
yeah,
Figuring out smarter ways for people to coexist, right? Like figuring out, does somebody really need a 1,000 square foot house? You know what I'm saying? Do we really need more of those? Or do we need to be smarter about how we coexist and how we exist in these spaces so that we can make space for our needs and not just
mhm,
our wants? Because right now I think our, the generations above me, I'll speak for myself, millennial, they very much were like the wants generation. I think
mm,
the millennials were like the end of the wants generation, and now we're starting to feel the needs. Like we need these things or else like the number of young people that are dying of cancer, men and women alike, of all cultures and races, the
mhm,
numbers are exponentially getting higher and higher. It is like it's an epidemic. You know what I'm saying? That
yeah,
has everything to do with our environment. That has
yeah,
everything to deal with the small little choices that we make on a daily basis or choices that are made for us. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So I say that to say, like, I really do think that, yeah, I feel like the policies around, community planning and like permitting, right? Like what's getting built where and how, what are the specs and all of that stuff. What's like allowed to be built in certain space, like all these things, they really impact how we live
Yeah.
and like how we exist. And even down to like something as simple as like, man, a moratorium on like liquor stores in certain neighborhoods and like carryouts. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
why do we need another? Like, there was a neighborhood that I was in. I was delivering some produce a couple months ago, and it was like liquor store, carry out, smoke shop, liquor store, carry out, smoke shop. And I was just like, what about any of those storefronts? Like, what do those storefronts provide to the community? And honestly, what good do they provide to the community?
Yeah.
What value do they bring to, the people in that neighborhood? They don't bring a lot. You know what I'm saying? So like, can we stop building them? Can we stop approving permits for them? I'd rather see an empty storefront than see a liquor store if there's
Mm.
already 5 in that community. You know what I'm saying? Like, ain't
Yeah.
nothing wrong with a liquor store, but when you see 10 in a 1 mile square radius, you're like, nah, they don't do this like this in
Right.
Chevy
10
Chase.
of those
Ain't
and
no
no
li- ain't that many
fresh
liquor
food
stores in Chevy
anywhere. Yeah.
Chase.
Yeah.
And it's alcoholics there too. You know what I'm saying? Alcoholics all over. But why is there 10 in our neighborhood? Tell me that. If we're so poor and we don't have no money, but y'all got deals, 2 bottles of Henny for $75. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying?
Mhm.
That ain't cheap. And
Yeah.
somebody's buying it because y'all been in business for a while.
Yeah.
And more of y'all keep coming. So it must be a market, you know?
Mhm. I think just to that same analogy is something that at a certain point it depletes, for lack of a better term, the soil of the neighborhood.
Yeah,
It takes way more than it contributes in
exactly.
anything that's good. Just a little last question. What is, and then we can end there, one comfort food that brings you joy, but if it's not already healthy, what's a healthy twist that you would put on it?
Comfort food that brings me joy. I'm I got a lot of comfort food, but it's gotta be healthy, right?
No,
It's
no,
gotta
no.
be
If it's not healthy, because I know something I mentioned was already a little healthy. So if it's not healthy, just a healthy twist that you will put on it.
I can't eat this anymore because I just like I'm lactose. I've like as I've gotten older, my lactose intolerance has gotten worse. But like I love pizza. Like that was like growing
Um,
up, that was just like it was such a treat in my house. Like it was like always associated with the weekend. It was like, hey, it's
mhm.
Friday, it's Saturday. Let's order from, you name it. Right. And I loved pizza as a kid. I would say a nice twist on it instead of like pepperoni and sausage and all of those things, arugula, spinach, mushrooms. You know what I'm saying? Like I love mushrooms.
Mhm.
I love spinach and arugula, like, that, like, peppery sort of
Mhm.
taste from arugula, it makes everything taste better. So, yeah, pizza for sure, that's a comfort food. What was your answer? What was your answer? I'm curious.
So one of them, I think I gave multiple because Dr. Claudia and Dr. Heather were throwing desserts and everything out there and talking about fall. So one of my it's soup, like it was the vibe was fall flavors in our
Right.
conversation. So it made me think of one thing. I like egusi soup. It's like a
Mm.
Nigerian.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like, I don't think people think of it that way, but it is healthy. It's like
Word,
melon seeds, like
word.
whatever, like green, like bitter leaf or spinach, that. And then I was like, you know what? They made y'all got me feeling like it's making a cobbler, like
Yeah,
berries. But I know what I do now, like with like the top crust, instead of like flour, I will grind up oatmeal till it's like oatmeal flour basically, and grind that
yeah,
up with like walnuts or whatever nuts I have till
that sounds
that's the
great.
flour. And then mixing like coconut oil instead of butter and whatever sweetener. My kitchen looks like a little micro market. So
Love it.
so whatever sweetener I'm feeling at the moment, it might be dates, it might be some agave, you just don't know. I make
Why
up
not?
stuff on the spot. So
Sure.
yeah, I feel you on the arugula is one of my favorite greens.
Mhm.
And speaking, you reminded me, I went to the farmer's market last week and they had turnip greens and mustard greens, which I don't see that often.
Yeah.
So I like them. My grandmother loves them, but she's 88. So I'm gonna
Wow.
cook some of those tomorrow. And so,
That's beautiful.
yep.
That's amazing.
Appreciate. It was a great talk, great conversation. Hopefully we have more just to get the word out, change the perception, the conversations around the whole topic, and just to push the movement forward.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Word. Word. Yeah. No, absolutely. Thanks for having me.